Good afternoon, you beautiful people. Koga here again with a nice cup of joe to get the blood flowing and get the energy up high straight into this video. Now on this topic though, Fast AF, which is another YouTuber who likes to make completely decked out max builds with mirrors and exalts beyond your wildest dreams. Even as a veteran myself, I can't even imagine the amount of budget that goes into his builds. Nonetheless, concerning the steel skills, he posted, how good can steel skills perform with a high budget? But wait for it. Lancing steel is garbage though. Good lord, sir. With all that money, exalts and mills falling from the sky, you can't make a damn steel skill work. But alas, do not fret. I'm here to show you noobs how it's done. Oh god, that got me excited, bro. Now, if you didn't know, every single build needs to meet 3 criteria in order for them to be qualified as a good build. Criteria number 1, clear speed. Criteria number 2, defenses. There's nothing more pretty than face tanking Minotaur and not giving a fuck with minus max. And criteria number 3, and probably the most important one, damage.
Balanced.
And with that out of the way, let's find out why a video titled How's the Savior Only 2 Exalts got over 30,000 views in one day, and now all my gear just seemed to almost double in price as people started figuring out how OP this build really is. Boss damage. Easy game. What's diving, bro? Ridiculous. Before we move on, if you guys have enjoyed what you've seen so far, please consider subscribing to the channel and leaving a like on the video, as it helps me immensely with the YouTube algorithm. On top of that, if you guys are interested in seeing how these builds are made from the ground up, please consider following me over at Twitch at twitch.tv/Kogares. The link is down below. You guys can see how these builds are usually made over a 3-day time period, as I only stream on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays. And on top of that, the Discord link is down below if you guys are interested in joining the club or the community. And it's a one-stop shop if you guys need to ask me any questions when I'm away from the YouTube. But of course, if you guys want to ask any questions on the YouTube comments down below, don't be afraid, and I'll do my best to answer all of those for you. And with that out of the way, let's get right into it. Now, welcome back to the detailed section of the build guide. This character is called Splitting with the Boys. Now, the boys signifies that we're using the Savior because we summon 2 reflections that each deal half our damage, but in total, it's basically doubling our damage. And yes, it's not a good sword, but in this build and with the steel skills, it's absolutely broken. I'll go over that very quickly. I'll show you now. But before we get into that, this skill or this build was originally using only splitting steel for both clear and single target, and it's actually viable enough where we can actually use it for single target, but it's not the best because it relies heavily on your attack speed. As you guys can see here, my attack speed is pretty meh because both our swords are literally god awful for attack speed. It has a 1.3 base attack speed, and this is where lancing steel becomes insanely OP. Now, on a quick note, you see this? You see this? That's lit. That's lit. On top of that, so we use splitting steel for clear, and then we use lancing for single target because it's just infinitely better. Like, we're talking like 10 times to 20 times the DPS single target wise, but for clear speed, it kind of sucks. So in order to make the best of both worlds, you see these last two little sockets down here? We have fork with splitting steel because splitting steel does fork. So when we shoot this with our shards, now it forks, and with the four projectile, those projectiles that forked will then fork again. And if you have a wicked fork, it will fork a third time. So we call this forkception. But besides the point, that's our clear speed, and it's absolutely busted. We don't even need an explode chest, but if you got an explode chest, I won't even want to imagine the amount of clear speed we can get. I'll show you very quickly. But with just two gem swaps, now we're lancing steel, and just like that is our, you know, single target swap. And we only really use it for like the big boy bosses. We're talking like tier 16 bosses if needed. You can still use splitting steel for that, and it'll clear them very quickly. Or Shaper, Guardians, other Guardians, Uber, other things like that. But to go on and show you why is it so broken, the reason why I did this, we have a tier 16 canyon here, some basic, just added cold, whatever, some, who cares, just good enough. And I'll show you why it's busted. Now, when you have shards, splitting steel will then shoot a projectile, and that projectile will explode with a bunch of other projectiles. What ends up happening with your savior is, when you crit, now they do the same thing. And what ends up happening is there's this thing called Call of Steel. This Call of Steel, you want to make sure that you buff this Call of Steel with this thing called Lord of Steel. Ideally this one, which have Impale effects and AoE, but all of them have increased use speed. This makes you cast and literally like you can just spam the crap out of it. It looks like you're doing a dance or something, and allows you now to cast your Call of Steel immediately. And what happens is Impales are they look like needles on top of the enemies. You're basically ripping out the needles and you're doing damage. So you're doing damage based on how many Impales the enemy has. So if you look at Call of Steel, it reflects physical damage on each enemy equal to the damage of the removed Impale. So the harder you hit them, the bigger the Impale. When you remove those out with Call of Steel, the more damage it does. And of course, the more Impales on them, the more damage that it does. What Savior, what ends up happening is... Let me show you guys real quick. No, look at that. When they shoot an Impale, you can rip those out too. So, for example... So, Savior, where you at, bro? There you go, there you go, there you go. Okay, so they're killing all this, right? And now it blows them up. So you see they ripped them out of their bodies because it does work on dead bodies. So what ends up happening is we get some stupid amount of clear speed. You guys can see right here. We'll finish this map real quick. And if you had an explosion chest, it'd be fucking absolutely bonkers. Just absolutely bonkers if I had an explode chest piece. But I made it as budget as possible, and I got a ridiculous amount of rewarding for it. Now, the Savior did double and then go down in price, luckily for us. I don't know if that's something to do with the Exalt prices going down, but yeah, it's ridiculous. See, that's Fork, by the way, on a tier 16 boss. The other one died already. So that's technically a 5 link with our weak link or our weak skill, splitting steel. While lancing is just a behemoth of a single target spell or attack skill, right? So that's basically the gist of it. Now, the other thing that's important is that if you don't have steel shards, the skill doesn't actually do any damage. Like, it does F all damage. Same thing with Lancing Steel. Lancing Steel actually uses up... Like, Splitting Steel uses 1 shard per attack. Lancing uses 4, so we only can do it 3 times. Otherwise, it shoots, like, half the projectiles, and it does barely any damage. But when you have steel shards up, the Saviors actually act and copy the Lancing Steel as if it had always a steel shard up, so it always does max damage. Now, the key note for this is that... Let me see if I can find a little enemy. They will summon and only attack from the position that they're in. Because otherwise, they will attack from afar, and that's really bad because we are point blank. They get a lot more damage, so we have to be up close and personal. So when you're fighting a boss, you want to make sure that you're standing up here and close and personal because they will summon from right here. You see as they're right here? They'll always... You see how they're always shooting from over here? They don't move. They literally never move. So when you're fighting a boss, make sure that you always attack from up close and personal, because otherwise they're hitting from afar, and when they're hitting from afar, they're not doing a lot of damage. But that's basically why Savior and the steel skills are absolutely busted. Lancing steel, honestly, by itself is not that good. And I think it should have been fine by itself also, because there's a lot of builds out there with Terminus S, and it should be good enough, right? But compared to a Savior, it's a joke. It's a complete joke. And his build is so perfectly balanced. It has good life, insane defenses. We have block of 38% chance, but when we pop our roomies, we have 58% chance to block. And when you block, you take, you block all the damage, so you take nothing. On top of insane life recovery from here, from Gladiator's Presence, and the Pantheon over here, where we have increased recovery rate of life and energy shield if you stop taking damage recently, which is blood rage. But this is basically from like damage over time on the floor, since the biggest weakness for block is we can't block damage over time, so it goes hand in hand. But what makes this really broken is that Lancing Steel shoots out a million bajillion projectiles. It's absolutely insane. And when you combine life gain on hit for this, you get insane recovery. I'm talking about like you can just face tank everything. Because not only do we have insane defenses to never get one shot, we have insane life recovery for whatever degens we ever hit. So we rarely ever die, and this character hit level 93 with no problems, and it can go even further, no problems. Right? And the build was actually fairly cheap. This Paradoxica I bought for like 80 chaos, and the Savior was only like 80 C at the time, and it was about 3 weeks ago. But before I get to the gear, let's just go over the gist of the character. The Ascendancy obviously is a champion. Now, when you want champion, you want perma fortify, obviously, because you want to be tanky as hell. You get unstoppable hero for all that armored evasion. Master Metal is the key note for this build because it gives you a lot of added fizz. You get nearby allies. You and nearby allies deal 6 to 12 added fizz damage for each impale. I believe we have 7 impales due to Master Metal. We don't have the impale Watcher's Eye. Keep that in mind. If you do get the impale Watcher's Eye, it's a lot more damage, but then you got to question whether you want like life recovery or more damage. We'll get that later. Right, and the last one is Inspirational. This is what I always get because it makes your banner reserve no mana. And the reason this is important to me is because not only does it gives you aura effect, a little bit of movement speed, but we have actually 5 auras. We have Dread Banner, Herald of Purity, Vitality at level 1 for the Watcher's Eye, Pride, and Flesh and Stone linked to Maim. Now you're wondering, how can we fit all these auras? The real reason is Dread Banner is free from here. We have a Circle of Guilt with reduced mana reservation, helps a lot. We have an Enlightened level 3 linked to our main Flesh and Stone with Pride. And I bought this helmet for literally 10 chaos. With Herald of Purity, has 20% reduced mana reservation. This is even the biggest one. You can go as high as 30%. And with a 30% one, you get even more mana. But with this and, just 2 -9 rings, I have absolutely no problems sustaining my mana. I have 53 mana and my mana cost is 14. Right? And just with that, these crafts are only 4 chaos. And if you don't have them, you can go to Global 820 and just put look for non-channeling mana cost craft, and you'll tip them like 2C, just crafts it for 4 chaos and you're good to go. But this allows you to fit all the auras and is really, really good without having to invest into nodes like Champion of the Cause, I believe it was called, to get reduced mana reservation, because even that's not going to help you. Right? So these things are actually dirt cheap. This Circle of Guilt with the buff effect and reduced mana, it's like 5-7C. Look at that. It's ridiculously cheap. When you go for double damage, it just goes up in price like crazy. But people don't realize the value that reduced mana reservation gets you. Now, yes, on that topic, if you do get a 30% one, you might be able to drop the mana reservation and then go even more and go double damage, but there's no point. The build budget it is, and our damage ridiculous. So the whole point of the skill tree is just getting life, attack damage, right? Projectile damage is the projectile build. Make sure not to get melee nodes and things like dismembering, because melee crit chance does not work, and disemboweling over here does not work because it's melee. So we go here, we get life recovery. These nodes are insane because it gives you increased total recovery per second from life leech, and this gives you maximum total recovery per second from life leech. So this increases the rate at which your life recovers when you leech, and this increases the cap. Because there's a cap on how much for life recovery. Let's say it's 200. This will make it from 200 to 230, so you get more life recovery when you cap out. Really, really important, and it goes really nice with the Vitality Jewel. But if you don't get the Vitality Jewel, I got this for that reason, so you're still okay. That's the whole point of that. You, of course, get life. You want to make sure you have 1 Lord of Steel, ideally the Impale effect and the AoE. You don't need the damage one because the damage is based off your impales. So if your impales are doing enough damage, you don't need to get another Lord of Steel to increase the damage of Call of Steel. No point. Get AoE. You want that massive clear speed. Right? Come down here. We have Rampart. This is amazing for damage, movement speed, and effective Fortify, making us tankier. And this is really good because, honestly, we have permanent Fortify. Simple as that. Crit for swords. Iron Grip gives you our strength goes into our melee damage. And who wouldn't want a 420 strength going into projectile damage, right? So that's the point of that. More sword damage, more... it's actually really cool. I got Swagger because we're dual wielding and I have a lot of blocks. I want to be tanky, right? Well, with this, we have 5% chance that, oh no, wait, we have 50% chance to get endurance charge on block. We do have endurance cry on walk.
I can't do this just yet.
I have endurance charges from that, but if we do block, we have a chance of getting endurance charges. But most importantly, we have a chance to get a frenzy charge on block. And, you know, continue here, point blank for more damage. Twin terrors over here for more dual wielding, crit chance, accuracy, more life, accuracy, damage, mana leech. You can get a mana leech from a jewel instead, but, you know, most of my 2 jewels are unique, so I didn't bother. It was 1 point anyway. Here for sword, and if you notice, I even went with brutal blade. Reason being, gives you a lot of block chance, literally 2% per node, and the last one gives you 4. But even then, on top of that, it gives you 10% chance to get a frenzy charge on block. So this, a swagger, you get 25% chance to get a frenzy charge on block, which is really, really nice. More life, more crit. Simple as that. Crit is very important. As you see, I scale a lot into it because if Savior doesn't crit, then you're not going to get your clones out. But luckily, we have so many projectiles that our crit chance doesn't have to be so insane. Right. That's pretty much it. We can scale it. If you notice, I don't have a bottle faith. You don't need one, but of course you can use one. And I don't know what you would drop because Dying Sun is your go-to flask. Right on, that covers the right side. On the left side is more life. We do go versatility for attack speed, global accuracy, and crit chance. But most importantly, we really needed that dex and intelligence because we need ints or like whatever things we have, enlighten, things like that. But we need the dex for Paradoxica because it has a ridiculous dex requirement of 212. Simple as that. And on the left side, he's getting more life. We get color arms so we can walk with war cries, more life. And then on the left here, we Blade Master for more fizz and accuracy. The build is extremely simple. We don't need any impale on the tree. As you notice, I didn't get force scoring or the other one, the swift one, because we have capped out impale chance. And those nodes are actually not that efficient if you don't need the impale chance. So that pretty much covers that. As for your gear, Paradoxica is your go-to weapon. You really just want fizz and ideally crit chance. But it has to be either fizz with crit chance or fizz with attack speed. To help you guys out, I'm going to put on the bottom a search link for the Path of Exile trade so you guys can see the options. So you don't have to manually search it because these are actually crafted mods according to the Path of Exile trade. So it might be confusing. But you want a Paradoxica because it says attacks to this weapon deal double damage. And when you're stacking so much flat fizz from Master of Metal over here, right, getting all that flat fizz from our, you know, our gloves and our ammi, and on top of that our rings, it just scales like crazy with this weapon. You combine that with Savior, and on top of that you get your clones, which have this to double your damage. So it's actually insane, and it's a good way because honestly the only thing that's better than a Paradoxica would be like a mirror weapon, and that's even more expensive than a Paradoxica, so you might as well use a Paradoxica. Now on that topic though, if you guys notice, my swords are really slow in attack speed. And for splitting steel, it's not that big of a deal. But what's cool about lancing steel is that the attack speed only hits the only matters when you lay the lancing steel down. But the rate at which the blades come out of lancing steel is not even anywhere, shape, or form correlated with our attack speed. So this goes insanely well with the fact that we're using a Paradoxica and Savior because we're so slow with this that splitting steel kind of feels bad. But lancing steel is perfect because who cares about attack speed, right? And that's why lancing steel is actually busted. I forgot to mention that. But here we go. Here I have Immortal Call, cast some damage taken, and summon Ice Golem. We don't need the Ice Golem, but I don't have anything else to put here. You can put Portal, you can put whatever you want. If your accuracy is not capped out, I recommend you do this. But also for the crit chance, it's quite nice. And we have Endurance Charge, so Immortal Call makes sense. Right, on our other sword, which is Savior, you want Leap Slam, Ancestor Protector, faster attacks. Our Leap Slam's free with a minus mana cost, so I didn't need to use Blood Magic. So instead I put Ancestor Protector just for the attack speed. Honestly, with Lancing Steel, it doesn't make that big of a difference, but it does help with Splitting Steel. Your choice. It does help you lay them down a little bit quicker. But you can drop it if you so want, because it doesn't really give us any damage. On top of that, right, we can move on to our helmet. Remember, I bought this for 10 Chaos. What I was looking for is accuracy and life with the helmet enchant. These are extremely cheap. You can find a bunch of them. Just look for some armor, ideally. And here we have Hill of Purity linked with a level 1 Vitality, right? And then have Arcanist Brand with Sniper's Mark. Now, the reason I do is because Sniper's Mark, you have to self-cast it and only affects one enemy at a time. This is super important because when we lay Arcanist Brand, it just lays there on the floor for about detach 5 seconds. So that means I don't have to deal with it. I can lay it before a fight and then it'll automatically attach without having to waste my time to recast it or just cast it on the boss the minute he becomes vulnerable. You know, they have that phasing like the Guardians. You have to wait for them to come out of their face in order to attack them. This can lay under them until they come out and then it automatically attaches and automatically curses them and that enemy only, right? Because what happens with this damn curse also, if the enemy summons a lot of, you know, allies or just little mods, or mobs, I mean, there's a chance you might miss and hit one of the mods, which is really annoying because these things actually have a ridiculous amount of cast time. It has a cast time of 0.5, which is annoying when you don't have any cast speed. So I highly recommend put Arcanist Brand for it. Another curse you can use is Poacher's Mark, right? And that gives you more life gain on hit, but it gives you less damage, like way less damage. And Vitality with the Leech more than covers your life leech. Trust me on that. So don't bother with Poacher's Eye unless maybe you're going for the other Watcher's Eye, which gives you Impale for Pride and giving you a lot more damage. And then you can make up the life gain on hit with a Poacher's Mark. That is your choice. So that pretty much covers the helmet. Very simple and clean. I crafted Cold Res because I needed it. Moving on to your gloves. Gloves, you really just want Fizz, Life, and whatever resistances you want. And look for an open suffix so you can craft cast speed for cheap. If you look for cast speed on a glove already on it, like as a modifier, so you don't have to craft it, it's going to go up in price insanely. So just look for an open suffix. I highly recommend it. They'll come out way cheaper. Right. Here we have Dread Banner, Second Wind, Enduring Cry, and Blood Rage. The second one's only for Enduring Cry, so it has a lower cooldown. Blood Rage is our primary source of leech and attack speed. And then, of course, Dread Banner is free, so it doesn't matter where you put it. If you put some quality on it, the effect of the banner goes up, and it does give you Impale effect, which is quite nice for damage. Boots, life, res, movement speed, and that is it. And that is pretty much it. These boots I found myself, they're crap. Here we have Maim and Flesh and Stone. The reason this is really good because Flesh and Stone maims, right? And when it maim support says enemies maimed by supported skills take 14% increased damage. That's stacked because since Flesh and Stone maims, the maim gem will give that maim an extra 14%. So in total, we're talking 30% increased physical damage taken, which is a more multiplier. Absolutely insane. And then of course, Flesh and Stone does give you reduced damage taken and blind when they're nearby, and reduced damage taken from outside the projectiles when you have it in stance. So, you know, you can always just swap it, slant, and then you go to blood when you go for our DPS. And honestly, we don't even need the blind because I do have a little bit of blind on my jewel, but we'll get that later. I didn't want to rely on that. But here we have main Flesh and Stone, like I said before, Pride and Enlighten level 3. You need a minimum of level 3. You can go for level 4 if you want, up to you. Now, make sure this is your main foiling for auras because these are your heavy cost auras. So you want those that enlightened with those heavy cost auras. That's what you want. Your belt is life, resistances, pretty much it. I got Flash Charge Gang. You just happen to get there. And I just grabbed some damage on it for like 4 chaos on it. And the jewel that we have here, you want either flat fizz, life, or attack speed when you dealt a critical strike recently. And then ideally you want some blind just for the, you know, additional defense because blind is so underrated. Blind on its own gives any build a 50% chance to evade. Doesn't matter what build you're on. So on a build that has a decent amount of evasion due to the champion giving you like 1,005 evasion, having blind is a very nice niche. And since we attack so much with Lancing Steel, we're definitely going to blind them. So I recommend getting a jewel just like this because attack speed is kind of useless for Lancing Steel, and we have enough anyway for Splitting Steel. That's my recommendation to you. Ring, life, res, get a little bit of fizz, and then open prefix for non-challenge skills have at least -8 to 9. This is tier 1. Look for that mod. It costs 4 chaos. Again, check global 820 and you'll find somebody there. This tier ring actually paid 10C for it, so they're dropping like hotcakes because of heist, so you should be able to find a pretty cheap one, but that's what you're looking for. Flat fizz, life, and resistances. The other ring, I already mentioned it, Circle of Guilt. Here you want buff effect and reduced mana reservation. If you get a better enchant, you may be able to fit a double damage one, but that's up to your budget. Your implicits, ideally look for some accuracy because you want to make sure that your chance to hit is always 100%. When you have a skill that hits so often, you want to make sure that every single blade has a 100% chance to hit, because even on like an accuracy of 96, you will lose like half your damage. It'll feel like you lost half your damage. So make sure your accuracy is always capped. The cheap way to make up for that is getting a jewel like this with, instead of the fizz, just get some accuracy. That's what I recommend. Right, so that's your other one. If you want, put some attribute modifiers on it. If you need those, the 10 to 20 to go even higher. I have 16 and it goes up to 19 with the attribute catalyst. That's what I'm going to say. So that helps a lot. Your other Ami, I overpaid for this amulet because originally I was using Splitting Steel and Concentrated Effect costs a lot of intelligence. So I don't really need that intelligence anymore, but you still need the dexterity. So look for life, crit multi, a high amount of flat fizz, and a decent amount of ints if you need it, like an agate amulet will be good enough, I think, with strength and dexterity. That's pretty much it. Make sure it's an open prefix so you can put -9. This might cost a lot of money for you because I did pay like an exalt, but like they're like 40 chaos right now, so who cares? 49C actually. So Go up to your budget. If you have to drop the crit multi to get the -9 mana cost, focus on that, because of course, if you don't have mana cost, you can't attack, and can't attack means no DPS. Now, very quickly, because I always forget to mention this, the anointment that you want for your amulet is actually True Strike or Assassinate. True Strike over here is actually incredibly cheap, sitting at a teal, red, and black, so it's like dirt cheap, maybe like 4 chaos, and it gives you more crit chance than, let's say, Assassinate, even though it gives you less damage. And it's much cheaper. This one needs a rainbow and a golden with a black, so it's much more expensive. The reason I went with this is because I needed more crit chance. That way, save your procs more often, and I value that more over the crit multi. But if you have a bottle of faith, and you have the budget, then of course go for Assassinate, right? And that pretty much is the only 2 anointments you want. But if you want like less damage, you want more life, then of course anoint like blood and discipline, or discipline and training, whatever you want, or fits your needs. Moving on to your chest piece. Now, your chest piece, what I highly recommend you guys do for budgets, I actually bought this chest piece with a divination card called the Sacrifice. And this divination card basically gives you, with 6 of them, gives you 6-link sacrificial garb, item level 100. This is super important because otherwise you can't roll the mod that you need. And I'll explain that now. I used that and I used Octet, and I got like life and triple res. I ended up selling it for like,
I can't do this just yet.
I think an Exalt. I don't have it anymore, but it was around here. And just you get life and resistances until eventually you want to buy your Hunter's Exalted Orb, and you want to slam this, and then you want to alt so it becomes a hunter base, and you want to keep alt spamming it with your alteration orbs, you know, over here. Say if you get like any little cheap gloves, these gloves are worthless. But you want to just alt spam it like I'm seeing here until you get tier 1 crit on a chest piece. And unfortunately, according to the rules of, you know, PoEDB, we have no choice but to get a high level base. So we go to our body armors. Doesn't matter which you pick. Right, you go to Hunter, and you see, in order to get the crit chance, it has to be item level 84. And this is where problems with you can't use an Astral Plate, because Celestial Justice Card only gives you an eye level 80, so you can't get the tier 1 crit. So that's why I went with a card that gives you an eye level 100 chest piece, so that way when I slam the Hunter's Exalted Orb, I have a chance of getting this tier 1 crit. It shouldn't take you too long. I got really unlucky. I got spell crit twice. I ended up selling it for like profit for like 4 exalts, because I got like something like this, exactly looking like this, with just spell crit tier 1. I ended up selling for 4 exalts. And the card only costs like 2C, maybe 1 chaos right now. They're dirt cheap. So you can get a 6-link for 60 right now for the Sacrifice. And then eventually save up for your Hunter's Exalted Orb, slam it, and then alt spam it until you get this. I highly recommend that you have your 6-link that you use with your life and resistances, and then buy for another 6 chaos, another Sacrifice, another Sacrificial Garb, and then slam it on that one. That way you can just roll it when you can and don't break the one that you're using, because I did that mistake, and then I couldn't play my character for a good hour because I was trying to fix my damn chest piece. Right, so that's what you want to do. And here we have Maim, Vicious Projectiles, Impale with Brutality, and then Slower Proj, Lancing Steel for our single target. But for clear, we have Fork, right, with Splitting Steel. And that is pretty much it. Those are the only 2 gems you ever swap out, and I always make sure to put them like on the downside of these 2 things right here, right? That way it's always like boom, 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 really easy to do, and it's not that big of a hassle. And that pretty much covers that. As for your flask, you want to use an Eternal Life Flask with bleed on it. Ruby's Concussion gives you a lot of block and a lot of armor. Highly recommend it. There's not really other things that can benefit you, but if you want big energy damage, then I recommend going for Bottle Faith. But I prefer Living. You want to Diamond Flask, of course, so you can crit more for your Savior. Onslaught for more attack speed, and movement speed. And Dying Sun for your big boy damage. And it gives you AoE, so it affects Call of Steel. And Splitting Steel, if you didn't know, is actually an AoE skill. When the projectiles hit something, they actually explode, causing an AoE explosion. So Concentrated Effects is actually a good 6-link for Splitting Steel, but we're not using it anyway. Right, and as for your bandits, you want to kill Alira because she gives you crit multi and resistances, and you're going to want that. As for your Pantheon, Solar Collie, because we get reduced damage taken over time. Get Thraxia, so you get Chaos Resistance damage over time. Makes a big deal for, like, you know, Desecrated Ground and annoying things like that. And then Shikari for even more reduced chaos damage taken, because again, block cannot reduce your chaos damage, and my chaos res is minus 60. It's minus 35 for the damage over time due to the Pantheon. It really splits it up. So that pretty much covers the build. The build is insane for its potential. It gives you so much broken damage. It is absolutely bonkers. It has amazing defense, amazing clear speed, amazing damage. There is no shortcuts, no cut corners in his build, and it's actually at a reasonable budget, right? You can get all these things, you know, and build it up little by little. But on that topic, I'm going to mention for leveling, I'm going to make a separate video for you guys to see how you can level such a crazy character like this, because I'm so proud of this character. So I'm going to show you guys the items to use, right? What skill gems to pick up, how would you go through the acts, very quick guide, and what weapons did I use until I got my gear. Because honestly, it took me 2 weeks to make this character, because I started from ground zero with 0 chaos, using whatever uniques, such as, you know, a Scava for damage, until I was able to buy, you know, my savior, my Paradoxica. I got my Paradoxica literally at level like 85, because I was using a Scava for that long, and it'll carry you a very long majority of the way there. So let's move on to the outro, and I'll see you guys there. And with that, that pretty much covers the entire build guide. So hope you guys enjoyed what you saw. Remember to like and subscribe if you like content like this. And don't be afraid to ask any questions about the build if you so need it. I'll do my best to answer those questions, because I know a little bit of the mana reservation can be kind of tricky for you guys. So I'm always here to help you, or join the Discord down below if you need that as well. But yeah, again, I'm going to say it. I'm going to make a leveling guide for this build, like in detail. And I want to do it more often for builds that I think really deserve it, that are actually like that top level. That way you guys can enjoy the leveling process and see what I'm doing and how to build it when you have very little currency, like I did when I first started this build. But with that, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed what you saw and see how busted this damn build is. It's almost like it's perfect for me. I'm never gonna like delete this build, because it's absolutely amazing until they literally gut it, or like the skill tree changes, obviously. So with that, guys, I'll catch you in the next build guide or informative video, and I hope you have a good one. Peace out. Perfect. I love it. That's perfect, dude.